Everybody, welcome to Hit Rewind. This episode we're talking about the second half of our albums of 1995. And I'm here with John. I'm Michael. How's it going, everybody? Oh, thanks for the answer.
Me.
Jesus, I'm so flustered. We already recorded this, so we're going to kind of speed through it because something's wrong with my microphone. I know you don't want to know the dirty laundry, but that's what's happening, and now I'm like all flustered and I can't think straight. So let's go straight into the albums that we have left on our list for 1995. He went first last time. I'll go first this time, and my first album is Bloodhound Gang: Use Your Fingers, which is completely ridiculous, immature.
It's a thing where I don't hate them, but I'm not a huge fan. There's a reason why I wouldn't really want to own an album. It's mainly just because, they got some good songs, but the joke of it kind of wears itself out like halfway through the album. So you kind of start, I think you use the word cringe.
Yeah, not as bad as the next album. That's really cringe. Like, there's some really squirm-worthy stuff in it. And I can't believe I went and saw them in concert after that album. But their first album is a very different sound. They had two different rappers. They're using a different DJ, which he was intermixing a lot of the old samples from like TV shows, movies, really obscure stuff. And there's sketches, and usually sketches do not work. They usually suck, and I think the sketches are actually legitimately funny. Not great, not SNL level, but they're funny.
Well, it's like I'll go, yeah. But that's also, I'm a little bit like that on sketches in general.
Yeah, they're really hard on hip hop. I don't know why everyone was so obsessed with them for a while. Nothing really else to say about it. It moves really well. I think there's some pretty good rockers on there. We both agree there's a terrible cover of Kids in America, which apparently you can cover that song for $1 and a sandwich from Kim Wilde.
Well, gets the name out there, doesn't it?
Yeah, and people know who she is, and they'll go back and listen to the original. All right, what is your first album of this list, of this episode?
My first album is Nightmares on Wax, Smoker's Delight. And it's a down-tempo, chill album. It's trip-hop. It is phenomenal because the guy who's behind this project, a guy named George Evelyn, he's this amazing DJ. And pretty much starting with this album, everything that he has put out is amazing. And I don't have a ton to say about it. Just listen to it. It's great. But the big thing is I wanted to make sure we covered at least one of these albums. Otherwise, before 2006, because it's a long time, and I'd love to have people check out his work before we get into In a Space Out of Sight.
Yeah, and 2006 is going to be a long ways away for the show because we only get through like 4 or 5 years. 4 or 5. Well, we do them in seasons, so we'll probably only get up to like 97, 98. Because I got to tell you, it's getting harder and harder as years go on. There's more albums, there's more movies, and stuff like that I want to discuss.
Yeah, so it's getting to cover something before, forever. Kind of want to find like the second best or third best thing that you can.
Yeah.
Okay, you're next up.
All right, Ben Folds 5's debut, self-titled, mostly known for their single Underground, which is kind of a fun, kitschy little goofball, tongue-in-cheek track, which we're starting to go into the nerd era of rock. We're about to, we got Weezer, and we're, what's the Rentals, I think was the spinoff band of that, or side band. And then we have Fountains of Wayne coming up and stuff like that. So nerd rock, unusual sounding stuff is starting to really take off. And to this day, I still sit there and I question, when I went to Lollapalooza, Ben Folds 5 was opening up against Metallica, and I really want to see Ben Folds 5. That's stupid. You spend that much money, it's fucking Metallica. You go see Metallica, you're happy, you shut up.
As I said, I do think the band is talented. I do think that he's having fun on this record. I also think that this is where shitty indie rock kind of began. At least that sound of it, the twee.
Yeah.
And it was something that was a hard listen, but it just kind of kept making me think of, God, this is this is the genesis for shit that I hate.
Yeah, if you like Apples in Stereo or the Shins and stuff like that, I do think it kind of starts here. Now, I do love the fact that he brings a big fun vibe with the piano playing. Like he's the old school Elton John kind of piano playing when it comes to mixing it with rock.
Yeah, what is it? I don't definitely don't hold anything against the man. I definitely understand why people will, kind of gravitate towards it. And it's a name that I was aware of. So I don't think I actually ever heard the Ben Folds 5. And unless, obviously MTV videos, I'm sure I've seen stuff. But after a while, it's like, do I actually know anything about this or not?
Yeah. All right, your turn.
My next one is The Roots. And pull my notes. Do You Want More is the name of the album.
And we were talking about it, like what separates them from a lot of bands is they weren't using samples. They didn't focus on digital music. They are a legit band that is just fronted by a rapper. So they have full on just own created music. I think the Beastie Boys were kind of toying at this with their last album when they started picking up instruments. And well, maybe it was before that, but I feel like not Licensed Ill. What's the fucking Ill Communication is where they really started doing, kind of like weird jam sessions, and that kind of flows into what the Roots are doing. But you said the Roots, this isn't their first album, right?
Yeah, no, this is their second album, but it's their debut for a major label, and it feels kind of like a coming out. This is who we are. This is what we are. We've covered a bunch of bands, a bunch of groups and stuff like that on here, especially with the hip hop stuff. If you like music, this is a group that you need to hear, especially this album and Philadelphia Half-Life are phenomenal pieces. I mean, yes, they are Jimmy Fallon's house band on the Tonight Show, so you can kind of see what they're like as well. This album, Distortion is Static, Proceed, Silent Treatment were all singles, but for me, Mellow by Man is the hit of the entire album. The title track, Dead Scat, are really good, are amazing too. You got Ese Waman, which is a live track, so you can actually hear what they sound like live, or at least at that time. Yeah, it's hard to say anything about this beyond the fact that it's, if you like music, and especially if you like jazz, like I do, this is definitely one to check out.
Yeah, it feels like these are the early days of alternative rap. Everybody talks about, of course, the boom of '92 with alternative rock, but no one really talks about the slow growth of that alternative scene in hip hop.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like there's so many bands like hip hop groups and stuff that were, it's like they got known at points, but they weren't necessarily household names. I mean, we did The Far Side earlier, stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, they were hits, but there was never really anything that really crossed over into more mainstream, cultural knowledge. And it's kind of a shame because the Roots genuinely belong, in that more cultural, more cultural cachet, like Tribe does or something like that. But yeah, I don't want to do too much beyond saying that this is like the first two Tribe albums. You should own this.
Right.
All right, your next one.
Okay, so it's time for some trailer trash, drive-in hillbilly fun. If the B-52s did rockabilly, it would be Southern Culture on the Skids with their album Dirt Track Date.
Yeah, and that was my problem with this. Really was I don't know how I feel about it. Like you bring up the B-52s, and that's definitely apt. It's one of these kind of groups that you have to have some kind of frame of reference for, just in some way. You can't just walk into this album without, having someone go, okay, let me hold your hand for a second and let me explain something to you.
Yeah.
it's the same thing with like listening to a Dead Milkmen album.
Right.
Or what was the other band that They Might Be Giants.
Yeah, and we're saying like Squirrel Nut Zippers. They have a very particular sound that aims at a very particular audience, and usually people outside of that aren't going to get into it.
Yeah, it's like I wrote my notes that it didn't hook me, but like I said, I really don't know how I feel about it, whether I really did like it or not. I kind of need to. I should re-listen to it to kind of formulate an actual opinion.
Yeah, this is during that era where people were really getting into old 50s and 60s kitsch. You know, it's like the next wave after the whole like rockabilly, like the Stray Cats, that kind of rockabilly, where they're more like loungy, like the shitty diners, like Mel's Diners. They were retro, but kind of like a little out of touch on purpose. Like it feels like the kind of vibe that you would get from that. Like something that wouldn't be popular where they were from. Like I think they're living from the South, but something that's cool in like the hipster area of Los Angeles.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Or Austin.
Or Austin, yeah.
Yeah. All right, your turn.
All right, so my next one is Seeds by Brother Cane, which this is a band that I am 100% sure I had never heard of until like a year ago when the song "In Full Shine On" came to my attention. But when I heard the song, I'm also 100% certain I had to have heard the song on MTV. But it's weird because Fools is an amazing song. It hits all the right notes. So it's like, for that nostalgia card, And listening to this album, I fucking feel cheated because why didn't I own this? So I kind of did some research in a way, and I guess it makes sense I didn't hear it because I guess they're a Christian band.
Oh, really? I did not pick up on that.
Oh, it's like which song? There's one of the songs in there is like really, really very religion heavy, but I genuinely don't know how big of a crossover act they were because Jars of Clay was a Christian band that had some crossover appeal.
Right.
And these guys, like Fools, was on the Billboard charts at #1 for like 6 weeks. So maybe my friend Russell, maybe he had this album, and that's where "In Full Shine On" came to my attention. And it's like, regardless of how you feel about Christian rock acts and stuff like that, this album is fucking fire, and it doesn't really proselytize.
I was expecting hip hop because I forgot Brother Ali and Brother Cane are two different bands. Brother Ali is a totally different sound. So when it popped it in, I was like, oh wait, what is this? And yeah, it's a really good rock band. Well, I just never heard of them before. I feel like there's guys that really should have had some sort of following, but I just never heard of them before.
Yeah, that's the thing. This is like, as far as I can tell, like, had this been, on one of these things, further out in the mainstream, this really would have been, burning shit up. It's good.
And there's always bands like that. Either they're a very particular niche or they're from an area. There's a band that was huge in Portland called Floater, which I've never even heard of, but they're a phenomenon around that area. And I'm like, okay, that's odd.
Yeah, so if you like your grunge Southern Fried, this is definitely an album you dig. What's your next one?
Well, speaking of Portland, we have out of Portland, but moved to Seattle, which pisses everybody off, is Everclear. Look, if it's not working for you in Portland, literally, Seattle is 3 hours at most up from Portland, so I don't see what the big fucking deal is, but people in Portland hate Everclear. They hate Art Alexis and like, he sold us out by moving to Seattle. Look, that's where the scene is. Your job as a band to keep the band together and successful. Fuck, it's still the same songs.
Well, my biggest problem I have with this group is
what?
I keep mixing up Everclear and Everlast.
I hate Everlast.
I can't remember whose song is what.
Yeah. Well, does it have, when it plays on the radio, does it have 40 scratches with the record or whatever to block out the cuss words?
True.
Yeah.
True.
This is their second album. The World of Noise is not very. It feels like a demo. It doesn't. It's not a good album. But this one is the first one from a major label, Capitol Records. It's called Sparkle and Fade, and I just remember like this one kicked me in the fucking balls when I first heard it when it came out like 30 almost years ago. And I just remember Heroin Girl. I know it was a single and it wasn't very big, but that fucking is awesome.
Well, it's like Electra Made Me Blind, Santa Monica, and her brand new skin. I really dug those tracks.
Yeah, the other ones that were off this was Heart Spark Dollar Sign and You Make Me Feel Like a Whore, I think was the other single off this. Was that off this album?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a big one off this one.
97 is like their biggest year, and then after that they kind of faded. Like by 2003 or 2004, like most of the guys from this era, they just ran out of stuff to say.
Pretty much, yeah. They were never a band I really connected with, but it was good.
They were very popular for a reason. They found a way to make grunge very radio friendly and not darker themes, but not depressing sounding. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of their songs is like, oh, about abandoned by their father and stuff like that, and you're like, oh, ew. But they make it listenable.
Yeah, it's not 100% my thing, but yeah, it was a nice revisit.
Yeah. All right, your turn.
All right. How about the self-titled debut of Garbage? An album so slick and shiny, it's pretty much reflective.
No.
It's okay. It is unfair to a lot of these bands that are starting out because I'm pretty sure most of them don't have producer Butch Vig as their drummer.
Right. I was like, that's almost like a free pass, like right through the. It's like Weezer with Rick Ocasek.
Yeah, but that's what I think is really good on Vig is it's like he was in bands before he became a producer, so he knows what and when he made Garbage. when he formed the band, he made it his focus. So even like if you look at his credits, all of a sudden Garbage forms, and it's just Garbage albums.
Yeah.
And maybe like one or two things in between, but basically that was what he did. And if you want to, kind of shit on them for being like a manufactured band or anything, at least keep in mind that he did treat it seriously and kept his involvement as quiet as he could to keep like a bidding war to break out with this band that he was working on. Because you think about it, it's like, oh, Hoover producer Butch Vig has got a band. We got to make sure we sign it. It's like, I want the music to speak for itself.
Right.
So, regardless of how you feel about that, at least he was trying to keep it as, it's like, yes, I'm making a project and I'm going to treat it as seriously as I would anything.
Yeah, and I absolutely love Shirley Manson's voice. There's something so dark and seductive about it, and I know like Everclear they would hit their peak with their next album, but there's something like you can hear there is definitely like a strong start. I mean, Stupid Girl is one of the greatest of this era. What was the other one? Is I'm Only Happy When It Rains. I mean, these are really huge songs.
This had a ton of singles. I mean,
did it?
Stupid Girl, Only Happy, Queer, Vow, Milk. Those were all singles. Only Happy When It Rains and Stupid Girl were the ones that had like the videos that we all saw.
Right, and like the top 40, like not just alternative charts, they went over to the other, the main top 40 pop charts.
And it's like Super Vixen, which opens the album, and As Heaven Is Wide are amazing. Heaven Is Wide is my favorite song off the album, actually.
And I have to apologize. This is the one album I forgot to listen to. I have everything written down, but then I forgot. So I have all the numbers in order, but between mine and yours, I forgot there was like, I put number 12 between because I ran out of space, and somehow I didn't see it, so I did not get to listen to it.
Yeah, it ended up being like one of the last ones I picked because I wasn't, it's like, going, I'll go with this too.
Yeah, I mean, it was on my list too, but when I saw yours, like, okay, well, I'll just, and then somehow I just forgot to listen to it. What almost made your list was Not Tori Amos, Tracy Lords.
Yeah, yeah. That was one. Yeah, I guess I'll talk about that one now. I forgot that it came out, and it's an album that I really dug. There's a techno group called Juno Reactor, and they got involved with her, and they basically put out a Juno Reactor album with her vocals on it, and it's really fucking good. And it's shit. Watch the movie Virtuosity. Basically, see the music video for the song "Fallen Angel."
Yeah, and now, was she doing her own music, or was she just coming in to sing?
She was wanting to do her own music, and that's how she got involved with them. Was they saw what they were doing. Oh shit! One of her songs is also in Mortal Kombat.
Yep, that's what I was saying. I thought it was in Mortal Kombat because I remember a friend of mine had that soundtrack. I listened to it all the time. I saw the name Tracy Lords. I was like, oh yeah, wow! I didn't know she was doing music.
Yeah, it's a good album, but that was not one of my. That ended up not being one of the ones that was actually on the album on my picks.
All right, so we got that down. Mine. Wow, we don't. Did I miss one? Did you do 2 in a row? Oh no, I see. The other one I missed was KMFDM, but sorry, I ruined that. Oops. Let me go to mine, and then I'll embarrass myself by going back to that. Trippin' Daisy, I Am an Electric Firecracker. Can I tell you that the cover of this album disturbed me for years? It's still kind of weird. It looks like he's soaked in gore.
Yeah, it's a thing. I'll say this. I did not like this. I don't think this is the first time I've heard Trippin' Daisy, but this is the first time listening to an actual Trippin' Daisy album, and I hate his voice.
Oh, you do? See, so another one, very particular style. They're kind of like the Trippin'. Oh no, I just said Trippin' Daisy. Said fuck. I'm having a moment, guys. Flaming Lips. That's what I'm thinking of. They're kind of in that vibe. A very unusual sound. You either get it or you don't get it. They had one hit off this that was kind of popular on alternative radio called "I Got a Girl," but I don't know. I got into it a lot. It was just a very unusual sound that I vibed with.
Well, that's the thing is, we were at the last show, I mentioned on one of the albums, I didn't think it had any personality whatsoever, and I said there's an album coming up on your list that is brimming with it, and this is brimming with personality. This is well, you said you mentioned another band kind of like it, but yeah, basically it's like, but this is one of those things where it's like there's not very many things that sound like this, and I like punk, and I like. There's stuff I like that have whiny, nasally voices. But just for some reason, I just could not. Piranha, I think, was the only song on this album I listened to from beginning to end and kind of liked.
Yeah, Piranha is actually, I know I Got a Girl is the big hit, but Piranha is a better song. I was obsessed with that for like 3 weeks afterwards, just kept singing it to myself.
Yeah, it's like, I will say, I at least heard all the song. So I did give it as fair a chance as I could, as opposed to, I think, was one I bailed off of.
Yeah, I mean, you always stick to the albums longer than I do. I'm the quitter of the show.
Yeah, it's like I will give them a fair shake, but yeah, this was a no-go for me as an overall thing where I'm just like, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Your turn for the one that I already spoiled.
No, I'm not gonna do that one. They'll have to wait until they can hear me talk about that.
Okay.
Because we're going to do Fear Factory's Demanufactured.
I'm going to duck down now. So the tomatoes aren't hitting.
I wasn't sure. This one of the ones if you liked it, I would have been surprised.
It scared the crap out of me, and I was like, ooh, not my thing.
And okay, so technically, I guess this is their third album because their debut album was recorded, then shelved, because they wouldn't sign a contract with the album's producer, so he retained the rights to the album until 2002.
Wow.
But they went and re-recorded like 8 songs from it, added some new ones, and then their debut, Soul of the New Machine, came out, which is a lot. These 2 debuts are a lot more death metal-y than this is.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up like kind of getting interested in the idea of like electronic stuff because they had a EP where Reese Fuller and Bill Lieb of this industrial band called Frontline Assembly came in and kind of remixed some tracks, which then led to them kind of enjoying what Reese Filbert did. So they kind of went from like a regular metal band to a industrial hybrid thing, and have pretty much been on that track ever since. And yeah, this album is brutal as hell. It is one of the rare industrial albums that actually got a foothold in the U.S. consciousness. Like, Zero Signal from this album was on the Mortal Kombat soundtrack.
I was gonna say, I feel like I saw Fear Factory like and they were never at the top of the list. It was always like Escape from LA, and then show all the bands, and Fear Factory be like one of the last ones.
Yeah, they show up in a lot of things. Really, the biggest I will say this is probably their best album. Like they've got good albums and interesting stuff here and there. This was not necessarily their biggest. The next album was really their biggest, which also had a cover of Cars with Gary Newman doing part of the vocals on. But this really it's a pounding album, and it is so fun to listen to. If your idea of fun is getting hit in the head with
It was too intense for me, man. I just couldn't.
Yeah, it comes out the gate swinging, and it does not relent. Even when it gets quiet, it does not relent. So that's your jam, 100%. This is awesome.
Yeah. All right, my final album is Supergrass, I Should Coco. Apparently that's slang in England. I just looked it up. I had no idea what the fuck that meant. Everybody was talking about Oasis at this time. And I remember really late on Alternative Nation. I can never remember. Okay, so it was 120 Minutes became Alternative Nation, or were they two different shows? I cannot remember. Do you?
Yeah, not really. It wasn't. I didn't really watch that much that side of MTV.
Okay. But I caught one of the videos, and they're using like their heads, but they had like little puppet arms and legs or whatever, and I was like, what the fuck is this? This is weird. But then the song just really got in my head, and I'm pretty sure it was all right, not Caught by the Fuzz. But and I wouldn't listen to them for another 6 or 7 years. I'd pick up their greatest hits, and then I would go back and listen to the full albums. I love their fun, goofy style. They look like they're the exact polar opposite of Oasis. Yes, they also kind of look like they have that Beatles look too that Oasis had, but they didn't have the we're so full of ourselves, we're going to be the greatest artists out of England ever. We're just going to be these three fun, goofy friends, whatever, that are just going to have a good time.
That's always a good thing, because I get that from the album, and All Right is basically the only song I was familiar with, but I had no idea who it was from. Honestly, weirdly enough, I didn't know All Right was even the title of the song, which sounds kind of stupid when you hear it, because All Right is one of the big things in the chorus. But
hey, I'll tell you this. Today, after 40 years of hearing the fucking song Rock and Roll Never Forgets, I didn't know it was Forgets. I didn't know until I looked at my phone. I thought until that moment it was Rock and Roll Never Forgives.
What's wrong with you?
I don't know, but it ruins the joke where I said, well, of course Rock and Roll Forgives, or Keith Richards would still be alive. So now the joke doesn't make any sense. Damn it.
Yeah, I just knew that was a song from Clueless. Overall, I didn't really like the album, but I do appreciate that it was a very, it was pretty varied. And, it's like you can definitely tell they're doing something with that kind of psychedelic Britpop, pop punkish type thing. And, it's like, okay, you definitely have that niche. It's not mine, but there's definitely a place where, it's like, it's fun, it's airy, it's a good time. And sometimes, yes, you definitely want to have that.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was intentional, but it does feel like they were just the polar opposites of that full of shit crap, like what Oasis was doing at that time.
Yeah.
All right, your last album.
Oh, was there anything else that you didn't put on your list?
Like I said, I think on the last episode, I accidentally threw it away again for like the 4th time in a row. I threw away my fucking list. But it was so godforsaken long. It was 2.5 pages is where I started from. And remember, I showed you pictures of it, and you're like, oh, My. I'll take a few off of your hands, just to make it easier on me.
Yeah. Well, I'll throw some of the ones I had. Filter, Short Bus.
That was, one of mine.
Morbid Angels, Domination.
Not one of mine.
Dark Tranquillity's The Gallery. Rammstein's Herzleid. Black Sabbath's Forbidden. Death's album Symbolic. GZR also does Geezer, the album Plastic Planet. That's Geezer Butler from Sabbath. That almost made the list, like so close.
Yeah.
But it also Burton Bell, the vocalist who's on Fear Factory, does the vocals on that album. And I kind of felt that would have been a little bit too much of him for you to handle.
Yeah.
Like literally, that fell off. I think that's where they were like garbage came on or something.
Yeah, I do know that Pulp was one of them that nearly made it. I feel like there was a Primus album that almost made it, and then Coolio's, the one with all the big hits. I can't remember what it's called right now, but that was one that was like,
Games of Paradise, yeah.
Yeah, and then I think Presidents of the United States of America was on that list, but then I remembered how much I fucking hate Peaches, even though I love the rest of it. So I was like, nah, I can't.
Yeah, I almost had Rancid.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, I almost had that.
Thrill Kill Cult, Hit and Run Holiday, and one that I hadn't listened to. I was gonna give the album a shot because I've liked songs here and there from them. Was The Light by Spock's Beard.
Oh, okay. I know them. They're like prog rock, right?
Yeah, but
okay.
Jesus, that album. Oh no. We might get a Spock's Beard sometime later, but not The Light. Jesus.
Well, and I remember Live Throwing Copper was one that I listened to nonstop when it came out, but I couldn't listen to it. It was another one of those where it's just pretentious.
Yeah, I really dig that album, but yeah.
Throwing Copper.
All right, so my final one is Nile by KMFDM. It is the first album that I heard from them, and it made me a fan. And technically, Juke Joint Jezebel was the first song I heard because it was in Bad Boys.
Yeah, I think we mentioned the last time there was one of their albums on our list is like I had a friend who was always like into the oddball music, and he introduced me to so much stuff. And I remember he was a huge fan of KMFDM, and he would listen to them, and I was like, I just don't get it. It's just not my thing. Sorry.
Yeah, well, this is the one I genuinely, and as much as they're my favorite band, and I love them, and I will always see them in concert whenever I can. I've seen them, goddamn, so many fucking times.
Really?
Yeah. This is one of like the handful of a 40-year career that is an actual perfect album.
Okay.
Like, from beginning to end, everything on this album is amazing. It works. And it's like, this is also the biggest that the band has ever been. Like, the previous album, Angst, did have a song that had a video that ended up on Beavis and Butthead. But this album has, Juke Joint Jezebel from this album was on Bad Boys. He was in Mortal Kombat. There's a song of theirs that's in the movie Hideaway.
Which we're going to be discussing soon.
Yeah, it's like there's a song, this happened a little bit earlier, but there's a song of theirs that's in Hellraiser 3. It's like, this period, especially this year, ends up being like the one where they exploded, and all of a sudden their name is out there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, soundtracks, we talked about in the last episode, soundtracks were so key to a band's exposure back then. And, bands like the ones Fear Factor and KMFDM, a big part of this era was getting on soundtracks. It felt like every other sci-fi movie had, one of their songs on it, and that was key to opening them up to a new audience.
Well, the thing that helped them with me was they ended up in some weird partnership deal with the anime distribution company Manga Video. Because the first song that I heard that was identified as them was the song Ultra, which was a part of a promo video that they had.
Okay.
That put clips from the random animes off of the Video Goes to the Shell, started with this little promo, and you had clips of shows to this kick-ass track. One thing I'll bring up specifically on this album is there's this track called Terror, which is the first time I listened on a mainstream KOPM album, because they did something like this on a side project. It's a spoken word track. I mean, there's a little bit of chorus that's sung, but basically it's spoken word, and Sasha is sitting there talking about a lot of, political state, in the U.S. in '95. And it's remarkably similar to political state in 2023.
Weird. In '95, we're in the middle of Clinton. That's unusual. I didn't expect that.
Yeah. And it's almost everything about it that he says is pretty much, he could have just lifted that song, dropped it right now, and you wouldn't know the difference.
The more things change, the more they stay the same, right?
Sadly, yes.
Yeah. All right, so that's the end of our list. Sorry we rushed to the beginning of it, but if you know the frustration that we just went through before recording the second time around, you'll understand why. All right, anything you want to plug before we go?
Not doing anything that much fun right now, sadly.
All right, so we'll be back as soon as we can with the video games and comic books of 1995, and thank you for listening. If we missed any albums, let us know. And that's it. Have a good night, or whatever. Have a good whatever. Have a good lunch. Have a good nap. Have a good day.
Enjoy yourselves in time.